Hey guys, welcome back for another video. We got a good one prepared for you today. What we're going to be doing is we'll be focusing on those non-top 25 games. We had our top 25 predictions video come out yesterday. Definitely go check that out. But this is all of the really good matchups that are non-top 25 matchups. We're going to run through them, break down the matchup, break down the roster, and try to predict the outcome to the game. Who's going to win, who's going to lose, and what we predict the final score will be. We'll also touch on the best bets, the money lines, the spreads, and the over-unders. Just because you're not in the top 25 doesn't mean it's still not a good matchup. There's a lot of teams that were just in the top 25 that fell out, that are working their way back in, and there's a lot of teams that will soon find themselves in that top 25. So make sure to hit that like button, make sure to subscribe. If you have any comments, please drop them below, and I will make sure to respond. Every week we go over every single college football game, the top 25 ones and those non-top 25 ones, and we also do the same thing for every NFL game as well. If you are a football fan, if you are a sports fan, make sure to subscribe to the channel. So the very first one we have, just kind of kicking things off, the first one that stood out to me is one of our Friday games on ESPN2 at 7:30. We have 3 and 4 USF versus 2 and 5 FAU. We have an in-state matchup here. We have USF. They have a 53.4% chance to win this game. They are 3-point favorites. The over-under here is 51.5 for USF. They've had a lot of injuries, especially at the quarterback position. They've been pretty banged up, but they still come into this game as the favorite. They are led by Archie, closing on 600 yards, 3 touchdowns, 4 picks, way too many turnovers. They actually started out the year really hot, really competitive. Then the injuries set in. They do run a pretty quick up-tempo offense. When they're on, they are hard to stop, but they are giving up a lot of points on the defensive side. And for FIU, they are led by Fancher, closing in on 1,200 yards, 5 touchdowns, 6 picks. USF, they average 25.1. They throw for 218. They run for 153, but they're giving up 30 points a game, 305.9 yards through the air. There will be opportunities for FAU to try to push the ball down the field, but that means they have to be able to score. Their offense is having issues doing that. They're averaging 24.4. Throwing for 197, running for 168. A pretty successful team on the ground. They're going to try to keep the ball on the ground, suck up some clock, but they're also giving up 28.1. So there's opportunities for both teams to get some yardage on the ground. For USF, their leading passer prior to injury was Brown. They have Joyner, they have Atkins, and FAU, they have Francher, they have Campbell Jr., they have Hayes. I have USF getting the win here, but it's going to be a close one. Both of these defenses give up points. Could come down to the final possession, but they win it 33-28. I have them covering the spread, and we're going with the over. And we're now moving on to our Saturday games. We have an ACC matchup on the CW network at 12 p.m. 5-3 Virginia Tech, who's rolling. They are pretty hot right now. They'll be playing 5-2 Syracuse, coming off of that 5-interception performance for Kyle McCord. I don't think he's definitely going to do that this Saturday. He should be better than his 5-pick version that we just saw him last time. Right now, Virginia Tech's the favorite, 68.9% chance to win this game. They are 4-point favorites. The over-under here is 52.5. Virginia Tech, they're going to be led by Drones. He's closing in on 1,500 yards, 10 touchdowns, 5 picks. Now, Syracuse and Kyle McCord, even with those 5 picks on Saturday, he's still closing in on 2,500 yards. One of the top passing teams in the nation. He has 19 touchdowns, 11 picks. Both of these teams can move the ball. Both of these teams have pretty up-tempo offenses. Syracuse, though, does have the worst defense. Right now, Virginia Tech, they're averaging 30.8 points per game, 194 through the air, 195.5 on the ground. Very balanced team, just under 400 yards per game. They're going to run it. They're going to throw it. When you run it successfully, that's going to open up that play action, and they're giving up 20.4 points a game. That's actually a top 30 defense. For Syracuse, they average 30.9. They throw for 379.6. Very good passing team. Kyle McCord just has to make sure he can complete some of those passes to his own team, and they're running for 90.3 per game. They're giving up 27. So Virginia Tech definitely does have the edge on defense. They have Drones. They have Tootin closing in on 1,000 yards rushing. They have the better running back. They can successfully run the ball. They can't throw the ball. They do have a mobile quarterback. They have Lane closing in on 400 yards receiving. Syracuse, obviously, they have Allen closing in on 500 yards. They have Meeks closing in on 600 yards. I have this game being close up to about the end of the third quarter when Virginia Tech and Tootin start to pull away on the ground. Virginia Tech wins this one 30-24. They cover the spread, and we're going with the over. And this next matchup is two teams that do not like to score very much on the Big Ten Network at 12 p.m. 3-5 Northwestern. They have a really bad offense, but they do have a pretty decent defense. They'll be playing Purdue, who's really not good at anything. They don't have a good offense. They don't have a good defense. Right now, Northwestern is a 1-point favorite. This game is practically a pick-em. It's going to be a close one here. They are 1-point favorites, 63.7% chance to win this game, and the over-under is 44.5. Northwestern, they're averaging 18.4 points a game, really low. They are led by Lausch, closing in on 900 yards, 4 touchdowns, 4 picks. They throw for 169. They run for 110. So they're averaging about 270 yards per game. Their defense is giving up 22.1 points per game. That's actually not bad considering the fact that their defense is on the field for the entire game. And for Purdue, they come in here, they're averaging 20.3 points a game, throwing for 190, running for 163.6, but they're giving up 38.4 points a game. That is one of the bottom 3 defenses in the entire nation right now. So even though Northwestern has a god-awful offense, there's going to be some opportunities for them to be able to score on Purdue because everybody can. Purdue is led by Card, closing in on 800 yards, 7 touchdowns, and 4 picks. He's been benched. He's been the starter. They're kind of shuffling back and forth. For Northwestern, they have Porter running. They have Kurtz at wide receiver. And for Purdue, they have Maccabee running the ball, and they have Claire closing in on 400 yards through the air. You have to give the edge to Northwestern because at least they have a decent defense. Purdue, their offense isn't as bad as it's marketed. They can move the ball. They just have issues with turnovers and in the red zone punching the ball in. I have Northwestern's defense carrying the day. Defense travels. They win this one 23-17. I have them covering that 1-point spread, but we're going to go with the under. Our next matchup is another ACC one on the ACC network at 12 p.m. 2-6 Stanford versus 4-4 NC State. NC State started out the year top 25. A lot of high expectations for them. They did not meet them, but they had a lot of injuries at the quarterback position, which caused them to have to start a freshman. Right now, NC State is the favorite, 76.3% chance to win this game. Pretty big spread here, 9.5-point spread. That's a large spread for this game. The over-under here is 47.5. Stanford, they have, just like Purdue, a bad offense. Not as bad of a defense, but it's definitely not good. Right now, they are led by Lamson. He is stepping in for Daniels. Lots of turnovers on the offensive side. They're only averaging 19.5 per game. They throw for 196.8. They run for 129.9, but it's that defense giving up 31.5 points per game. And that's pretty bad. They give up just under 283 passing yards. That secondary is going to be wide open for Bailey and NC State. He's closing in on 1,400 yards, 8 touchdowns, 4 picks. Playing a lot better than he started out playing. He's a very young player, filling in, but he's actually doing pretty good. Can they get over 500? They're averaging 26 a game, throwing for 260, or running for 106.9. And their defense also highly questionable, giving up 31.1 points per game. That used to be the strength of NC State, was their physical defense. Not so much this season. I still have NC State pulling this one out, 26-17. I do not have them covering that spread, and we're going with the under. We're now moving on to an SEC matchup on the SEC network at 12:45. We have 5-3 Vanderbilt coming off that loss to Texas. They did play them close, though. Almost got another top 10 upset. They'll be playing 3-5 Auburn. We had them winning last week. They have a 63.4% chance to win this game. It's Auburn who comes in here as the favorite at home. 6.5-point favorite. Their over-under is 48.5. So Vanderbilt was just ranked, but they come into this game as the underdog. They're going to be led by Pavia. He can sling it. He's also a mobile quarterback. He loves to run. He loves to scramble and extend plays. He's closing in on 1,600 yards, 13 touchdowns, 3 picks. Vandy's averaging 32 points a game, throwing for 207, running for 156. Solid defense, giving up 22.8 points per game. For Auburn, they have massive issues on the offensive side, especially at the quarterback position. It's going to be Thorne starting. We are all very familiar with Peyton Thorne. He's a mobile quarterback, but he's not necessarily the best quarterback. He's closing in on 1,600 yards, 12 touchdowns, 7 picks. Got to keep the interceptions down. Got to get him to be able to push the ball. He's had a lot of issues generating those first downs, leading the points. Right now, Auburn, they average 27.6. They throw for 270. They run for 178.6, and they have a really good defense. It's a top 20 defense, giving up 19.5 points a game. Auburn kind of disappointed this season. A lot of people had high expectations for year 2 under Hugh Freeze. they do have talent. It's just putting everything on the page together. For Vanderbilt, they have Pavia. He's the leading rusher, closing in on 1,600 yards. They have Stowers catching the ball. For Auburn, they have Hunter closing in on 900 yards on the ground. That's really good. They have Lambert Smith closing in on 600 yards receiving. This game's going to be close. This game, to me, is going to come down to the final possession in the fourth quarter. Could be a score, could be a turnover with that final possession. But I have Vanderbilt squeaking out a close one, winning this one 28-23. So the spread not being covered, and we're going to go with the over. And then another SEC game on 2:30 on the SEC Network. 4-4 Maine versus 4-4 Oklahoma Sooners. Oklahoma Sooners have been playing quarterback carousel. Should be Jackson Arnold back at the quarterback position here. They've been struggling on offense. Who better than to play a lowly team to kind of reinvigorate that offense and get it going? They have a 98.4% chance to win this game. 34.5 point spread. The over-under here is 43.5. That's a massive spread there. That is a large spread for them to cover, but can they do it versus Maine? Maine is led by Peavy, closing in on 1,600 yards, 11 touchdowns, 4 picks. They're averaging 24.1 points a game. That's not going to bode well for a pretty good Oklahoma defense who's still top 10 in the nation in sacks right now, and they are giving up 27 points per game. So there should be some opportunities for Oklahoma to work on some things. They do have a new coordinator. Can they get that offense going here? They're averaging 21 points a game, throwing for 207, running for 117, giving up 21.9 points a game, which isn't bad considering they have that defense on the field a lot. They have Barnes. They have Sharp. They should have the playmakers. They're extremely banged up, especially at the wide receiver position. Jackson Arnold, 5-star quarterback. He has to step up here. This is the game to show why they picked him up coming out of high school. I have Oklahoma cruising here, winning this one 44-7. I have them covering the massive spread, and we're going to go with the over. And then another ACC game at 3:30. We have 4-4 UNC. Mac Brown needs to get this team over 500. If they drop to 4-5, if they lose to Florida State, there's going to be some fire going on under his seat. They'll be playing 1-7 Florida State coming off of that loss to Miami. Right now, UNC is the favorite here. They are 2.5 point favorites. They have a 53% chance to win this game. Practically a 50-50 matchup. The over-under here is 48.5. UNC, they've had injuries at the quarterback position. They lost Johnson, so they've been going with Criswell. He's closing in on 1,700 yards, 10 touchdowns, 3 picks. Florida State, who knows who's going to be rolling out at quarterback? They've been rolling through about 4 different quarterbacks. You're probably going to see some type of combo of all of them on the field this weekend. For UNC, they're averaging 33.9 per game, throwing for 263, running for 190.8. They're not having issues scoring the ball. They're having issues keeping the other team out of the end zone. They are giving up 28.4 points a game. Florida State hopes that bodes well for them. They haven't scored over, 24 points this entire season? I don't think they've scored over 21 points their last 6 straight games either. One of the worst bottom 5 offenses in all of college football. They're only averaging 14.9 points a game. Maybe they can get some scores, though, on the UNC defense. They're throwing for 208.8. They're running for 80.4, and their defense is giving up 26.4 points per game. UNC, they have Criswell. They have Hampton, one of the top 10 running backs in the nation, closing in on 1,100 yards through their first 8 games. He's lighting it up. He's their primary weapon. And they have Jones at wide receiver for FSU. They have Tofali at running back. They have Douglas at wide receiver. They don't have the quarterback. If you don't have a quarterback, you can't push that ball. I have UNC winning this one 30-24, covering the spread, going with the over. And then at 3:30 on the Big Ten Network, we have 2-5 UCLA versus 5-3 Nebraska. Do not sleep on Nebraska's ball-hawking defense. A very solid team, a lot better than their 5-3 record. They have a 67.8% chance to win this game. They come into this game 6.5 point favorites here. The over-under is 44.5. For UCLA, they've had a lot of injuries at the quarterback position, but Garber should be back. He's closing in on 1,500 yards, 8 touchdowns, 9 picks. A lot of interceptions, a lot of issues in the red zone. Nebraska's going to feast on that. They're going to put the quarterback under pressure. Pressure forces mistakes, which turn into turnovers. Nebraska is led by Raiola, freshman quarterback, closing in on 1,800 yards, 9 touchdowns, 7 picks. For the Bruins, they're averaging 17.4. They throw for 257. They can only run for 64.6 yards per game. That is one of the worst I've seen in the country right now. It's going to be even harder to run on that Nebraska defensive line. They're giving up 29 points a game. For Nebraska, they average 24 points per game. They throw for 247. They run for 127.8. It's that defense, a top 20 defense, only giving up 18.1 points per game, only 98 on the ground. They're going to look to shut down the Bruins' pathetic run game, force them into long-distance throwing situations on third downs. That's going to lead to some issues here. For Nebraska, they have Dowdle closing in on 500 yards on the ground. They have Banks. They have the better quarterback, running back, wide receiver, coach, and they have the far superior defense. Nebraska should win this one at home easily. I have them winning it 30-16, covering the spread, going with the over. And then we have a Big 12 game. This is a pretty interesting game because I could see the underdog pulling this one out. But at 3:30 p.m. on Fox Sports, we have 3-5 Arizona, who has better skill position talent than that 3-5 record. So you don't want to sleep on that and judge them solely off of that because the roster is better than that. They're just having coaching issues. They'll be playing 3-5 UCF. Right now, UCF is the favorite, 74.6% chance to win this game. 6-point favorites. Over under here is 57.5. UCF is also better than that 3-5 record. They have extremely good talent on this roster. It just in no way has been clicking this season. Right now, for Arizona, they are led by Fafita at the quarterback position. When he's on, he's on. He just hasn't been on in a while, and he's been getting hit, sacked a lot. He's closing in on 2,100 yards, 11 touchdowns, 10 picks. They're averaging 23.4, throwing for 275.5, running for 128.8, but it's that defense giving up 28 points a game. But they do have one of the better quarterback wide receiver combos. They have Fafita. They have McMillan at quarterback closing in on 1,000 yards. When that connection's on, they can take over a game. They also have Connolly at the running back position closing in on 600 yards. For UCF, they've been shuffling in quarterbacks, Jefferson, Brown. They've had injuries. Guys have gotten benched. This is still Gus Malzahn's team. Can he get everyone back on track? They're going to be led by their running game, which is going to suck up clock. They're averaging 30.4 points a game, throwing for 201, running for 267.9 yards per game. One of the top 15 rushing teams in the nation. If they can control the line of scrimmage or run the ball, they're going to be hard to stop, and they're going to be on the field a long time. They are giving up 27.1 points a game. They have R.G. Harvey, also a top 10 running back. He's closing in on 1,100 yards through their first 8 games. Like I said, a top 15 rushing team. If he's on, if he's getting first downs, they're going to just run the ball right down your throat, and they have Hudson at wide receiver. I have UCF pulling the win out here, winning this one 33-28, so not covering that spread, but we will be going with the over. Then the next one is a Big 12 matchup at 7 p.m. on Fox Sports, 5-2 Arizona State. When Arizona State is successfully running the ball, this is a really competitive team, just as Utah. They'll be playing 3-5 Oklahoma State, one of the massive letdowns from the season. A lot of people picked them to win the Big 12. Now they're fighting to just try to get to a bowl game, but they are going to be the underdog here. They still have a 56.5% chance to win this game, but it's Arizona State and the Sun Devils who are 3-point favorites. The over-under here is 54.5. When you look at Arizona State, they've had injuries, but they should have Levitt back. He's closing in on 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns, 4 picks. And for Oklahoma State, they have Bowman. Bowman's been the leading feature on offense, and that's the issue here. He has too many interceptions. The guy's like a 15-year senior. He hasn't gotten it done in 15 years. He's not going to get it done now. They still have Ollie Gordon, the Doak Award winner from last season. He had 1,700 yards, 21 touchdowns last year. He's basically been a non-factor in this offense. The offensive line has not lived up to the expectations. A major disappointment for Mike Gundy's team. He's got to get things back on track here. The season's almost over. You can still get to a bowl game, but you got to get hot here. Bowman closing in on 2,100 yards, 14 touchdowns, 10 picks. For Arizona State, they average 29.6. They throw for 201.3. They run for 208.3. Very balanced offense, very successful when they're able to run the ball, which is opening up that play action. And they're giving up 23.1 points a game. For Oklahoma State, they average 30.5. They throw for 296.1. That's the issue. Yes, that's great. Teams are letting you throw, and they're stacking that line and daring you to throw on them because they want to shut down the run game. Throwing has not worked. It does not suck up time. Bowman throws too many picks. You got to get Gordon going. And they're giving up 29.9 points per game. They give up about 515 offensive yards per game. That is awful. The defense is also a major weakness here. For Arizona State, they have Levitt. They have Scatabo closing in on 900 yards on the ground. He single-handedly ran up and down on Utah, and they have Tyson at wide receiver. For Oklahoma State, they got to get Ollie Gordon. He's the missing piece there. He's closing in on 600 yards. That's not going to cut it. He should at least have double that right now. And they have Stribling closing in on 600 yards. I have Oklahoma State getting the upset here. I think Gordon has a decent game. They can control the line of scrimmage. They win this one 33-27. So that would be the spread not being covered, and we're going to go with the over. That's if we get Ollie Gordon going on the ground. If not, it's going to be a long day for Oklahoma State, and the Sun Devils should pull it out. And then back to some Big Ten play on NBC at 7:30. We have 5-3 Wisconsin, who's actually pretty hot right now, playing solid, running the ball. They've gotten back to what they do best, lining up and running it down your throat and playing good defense. They'll be playing 5-3 Iowa. We know they're going to have a good defense. It's going to be the offense that's the weakness. Right now, Iowa has a 58.6% chance to win this game. They are the favorite, 3-point favorite. Over-under here is 37.5. It's always in the 30s for Iowa because the offense is usually pretty bad. Right now, Wisconsin, they are going to be led by Locke, who's been filling in for TVD. He's closing in on 1,300 yards, 7 touchdowns, 6 picks. And for Iowa, they've had injuries at the quarterback position, but their leading passer is still McNamara, closing in on 1,100 yards, 6 touchdowns, 5 picks. Still has yet to throw for 200 yards on a Big Ten team. Right now, Wisconsin, they're averaging 27 points a game. They're throwing for 218.8, but it's that running game they've gotten going in the last few weeks. They're averaging 179.9 yards on the ground. They're giving up 18.9 points per game. That's a top 20 defense nationally. And for Iowa, they average 29.4. They throw for 145.8. Still an awful passing game, but a lot of success on the ground, which sucks up clock. And they are a physical team built at the line of scrimmage. They average 209.1 on the ground, giving up 19 points a game, which also gives them a top 20 defense nationally. For Wisconsin, they have Walker leading the way, closing in on 700 yards on the ground. They have Anthony II closing in on 400 yards. But Iowa has Caleb Johnson, one of the top 5, if not a top 3 running back in the nation, closing in on 1,200 yards through 8 games. He's on pace for 1,800 yards during the regular season. He already has 17 touchdowns. And they have Lakey catching the ball, closing in on 300 yards. I have Iowa riding Caleb Johnson all the way from the first through the fourth quarter, winning this one 20-17. A very close win. That would be a push. That line will move by the time that we get to kickoff, and we're just slightly coming in at the under. And then on the Big Ten Network at 7:30, 4-4 USC versus 4-4 Washington. Both of these teams have a lot of pressure on their coaches, especially Lincoln Riley. He needs to win this game, cannot drop below 500 versus an old Pac-12 rival. Washington, there's an exception to be made here. New quarterback, new coach, new scheme, completely new team. So not as much pressure on them, but lots of pressure on the Trojans here. Right now, the Trojans, slight favorites, 67.7% chance to win this game, 2.5-point favorites. They are led by Miller Moss, closing in on 2,300 yards, 16 touchdowns, 6 picks. And Washington has Will Rogers, closing in on 2,100 yards, 13 touchdowns, 4 picks. For USC, they average 31.8 points a game. They throw for 298.4. They run for 144.1. Solid defense in first year under D'Anton Lynn. Much better than last year, much better tackling than last year. They are giving up 21.8 points a game. For Washington, they also have a solid defense, but they average 23.3 points a game. They're only giving up 18.8 points per game. Solid top 20 defense right now. That's going to keep this game close. That's going to keep this game as a one-possession game. Looking at the rosters here, USC, they have Marks closing in on 800 yards, plus he also catches the ball out the backfield. They have a very deep wide receiver core, Lemon, Lane, Branch, multiple weapons that they can push the ball to on those third down situations. And for Washington, they have Coleman closing in on 800 yards on the ground. They have Boston closing in on 600 yards receiving. I have USC winning a really close one here, taking this one 27-23. I have them covering that spread, and we're going with the over. But keep your eye on this game because it's practically a 50-50 matchup to me. And then a Big 12 matchup on ESPN2 at 8 p.m. 5-3 TCU, who's gotten things looking pretty good the last few weeks. They'll be playing 4-4 Baylor. Dave Aranda needs this win. He needs to at least get a bowl game this season. If not, he will for sure be getting canned. We have TCU as the favorite. Well, actually, they are the underdog here. We have Baylor as the favorite, 57.8% chance to win this game. 3-point favorites. The over-under here is 62.5. There's going to be some points scored here. Both teams have had success moving the ball. For TCU, they have Hoover closing in. They have one of the best offensive minds in all of college football calling plays. Hoover's closing in on 2,700 yards, 19 touchdowns, 8 picks. Baylor has Robertson closing in on 1,600 yards, 17 touchdowns, 4 picks. A much better Baylor offense than we've seen the last few years under Dave Aranda. For TCU, they average 32.5. They're throwing for 341.3, one of the highest passing teams in the nation, top 15 passing, running for 102.5, and their defense is giving up 28.3 points a game. The big issue for them has been their offense giving tough turnovers, thus putting their defense in a bad situation where they give the opposing offense a very short field, which leads to points because they're not giving up that many yards per game, but they are giving up a lot of points. For Baylor, they average 33.1. They throw for 244.6. They run for 176, and they're giving up 25.9 points a game. TCU, they have Hoover, they have Cook, they have Becht. For Baylor, they have Robertson, Washington, Cameron. I have upset here. I have TCU having that ball last fourth quarter, going down the field, getting a touchdown when they need it. I have the Horned Frogs winning this one 33-30, the spread not being covered, and we're just barely slightly going with the over. And our final game on CBS at 8 p.m., 5-3 Colorado State, a much improved team over when they played Colorado. They'll be playing 3-6 Nevada. Nevada comes in right now. They have a 62.9% chance to win this game, but it's actually Colorado State who's a 1.5-point favorite. This game is practically a push here. It's going to be a very close game. The over-under is 44.5. Colorado State, they're going to be led by Nicolosi at the quarterback position, closing in on 1,500 yards, 7 touchdowns, 5 picks. Nevada, they're led by Lewis, closing in on 1,300 yards, 10 touchdowns, 5 picks. Colorado, so both teams do leave a lot to be desired on the offensive side. Colorado State, they average 21.8. They throw for 193. They run for 182. Their defense giving up 24.5. For Nevada, they average 25. They throw for 204. They run for 187.6. Their defense gives up 27.6. Both teams have very balanced offenses. Both teams about 400 yards every single game. This game could turn into a shootout easily. For Colorado State, they have Morrow closing in on 800 yards on the ground. They have Horton closing in on 400 yards. And for Nevada, they have Reed closing in on 700 yards. Jaden Smith closing in on 600 yards. Both teams can have some success moving the ball, especially running the ball. Who's going to dominate here? We have Colorado State on the road. That's why they're the underdog. But I think that they're going to pull it out. I have them winning this one 27-20. I have them covering that spread, and we're going with the over. So that's our non-top 25 predictions. Make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe. If you have any comments about these games or any other ones, drop them below and I will respond. Thank you.